Reach and penetration of the coronavirus pandemic opened up a new front today, with more of the world's biggest sporting contests cancelled or postponed. Much of the big football events in Europe have been put on hold. That includes the English Pрем'єр-Ліги and the Champions League as well. That announcement coming just in the past hour. Well, India's cricket Premier League and the start of the Formula One season have also been suspended. Elsewhere, stock markets in Europe picked up on some of the ground they'd lost in Thursday's huge falls. Asian markets, though, continue to slide. And Italy, the country worst hit in Europe, there the number of dead has reached more than 1,000 people in the past 24 hours. Well, let's go live to Rome. We can speak to our correspondent Sima Katecha, who's there for us. Also, after her, we'll go to Julia Manchester from The Hill, who joins us from Washington, D.C. Sima, if I can start with you. More than 1,000 dead, some very tough measures put in place. Is the government thinking that these are having an impact already or not?
Well, the government's told the BBC that these measures are working. In the north of the country, they say that the rate of people being infected is decreasing and that people are recovering rapidly. Now, the Chinese have sent equipment to Rome. They've sent medical experts who are giving advice to doctors here. We're trying to find out a bit more about that so that we can bring that to you when we do know. But this is a country that is dealing with very strict measures in place. Remember, there are 62 million people here in Italy, and they're being told that they can't move around freely. Schools and universities are closed, restaurants too, shops and pharmacies are open but incredibly quiet. I mean, walking through Rome, you can see how eerily quiet it is. It's like being on a movie set. Now, we're hearing conflating reports that some Catholic churches in Rome are apparently closed, but we're also hearing that perhaps the Pope has reversed that decision. Again, this is not confirmed. It's something that we're hearing at the moment. But when we do confirm that, we'll bring it to you straight away. OK, stay with us, Sima. I want to go to you, Julia Manchester. Very strict conditions for people outside the United States. We've got that travel ban coming into force in a few hours' time. What's it like inside the US?
You know, inside the U.S., I would imagine it's like how it is in the U.K., for example. A lot of us are stocking up on food. I was at a grocery store last night, probably a mistake for me in terms of timing because it was packed, and at the time they were just trying to restock. But I think there's just, in general, quite a bit of anxiety. Not far from where I'm sitting here in Washington, D.C., in the state of Maryland, they just canceled school for the next 2 weeks. Universities and colleges across the country canceling schools as well. Right now, we're a little concerned about the timing of a deal between Nancy Pelosi and the House and the Trump administration as to how to move forward with coronavirus. You know, they're disagreeing over the issue of paid family and sick leave. So lots of anxiety. We're getting mixed messages from the government. So it's a very concerning time right now.
Stay with us, Julia. Sima, just back to you. How many people are moving around in Italy under those special permits that you have to be given now by the police and the Interior Ministry?
Well, it's very strange. I mean, walking through Rome ourselves, one of our colleagues was actually stopped by the police, asked who she was. She had to show this document where you have to list why you're moving around, who you are, what you're doing. So these special measures are affecting daily life. Like I said, people can't move from city to city, town to city around the country without having good reasons. So emergencies or a sick relative or work are the reasons that I'm hearing that people are actually allowed to then move, but it is restricted and it's difficult. I mean, you know, we were speaking to a waitress the other day. She said life has never been this difficult in Rome. She's never seen it this eerily quiet. She doesn't know how long it's going to go on for, and I think that's where the trepidation is. People don't know how long this outbreak is going to last, how long their life is going to be affected. And you can imagine if you're not working and you're staying at home inside all day, as we're feeling in other countries around the world, it's incredibly arduous.
OK, and in fact, Sima, the Chinese have sent medical specialists, I think, to Italy to try and help out as well. That's happened in the last 24 hours. Just coming back to you, Julia, because the whole issue of testing, are there enough kits out there? It's quite interesting, isn't it? President Trump has been saying, yes, there are. It transpires has been standing next to somebody down in Mar-a-Lago who's actually tested positive and still says, the president still says he doesn't want to be tested. But we've heard this from Anthony Fauci, the man in charge of this whole thing. Let's just listen to what he has to say first of all and then pick up on that in a moment.
the system of testing was originally designed for a doctor-patient type of interaction where you go into a doctor's office or a clinic with symptoms, and the reason you want to test is either you've been exposed or you have symptoms. That goes to a public health laboratory that the CDC made the test for. It works very well for that. But what it doesn't work for is if you want to do broad blanket type of screening to answer the question that so many people are asking, how many people in this country are infected?
And Julia, has any modelling been done on that precise point, the numbers of people potentially infected so far, and then what the projections are?
So I haven't seen any modeling from a national perspective. However, I can tell you that out of the state of Ohio, we've seen that five people have currently been confirmed to have the coronavirus. However, their health department head came out yesterday and said they are estimating that 100,000 people in that state, that's about 1% of their population, could potentially have the coronavirus. Now, I don't know if any modeling has been done at the national perspective. I just haven't seen it yet if it has been done. But I think that snapshot of Ohio really gives you an idea of really the scale of this and what we're potentially facing. I mean, if you look at a number of states, governors are declaring states of emergency. Like I said before, schools on the public and private level are closing. So what you're seeing right now are state and local officials really on the front lines of all of this. But at the same time, we're getting very mixed messages from the Trump administration as to where to go from here.
Yeah, okay. Julia Manchester from the Hill in Washington, D.C., or Maryland, in fact, and Rome Simikazeccia, thank you both very much indeed. Well, as we were saying, sporting events around the world have been rocked by the outbreak, with many being postponed or simply cancelled completely. And the latest sporting casualty is right here in Britain. Let's go live to our studios in Salford, where we can speak to sports presenter Jane Dougal. A lot of disappointment for fans, well, and players.
Yes, Tim, this is completely unprecedented, in fact. There was an emergency meeting called overnight and took place in the last couple of hours with the Premier-League because currently 6 Premier League clubs are affected by the coronavirus. They either have players who are being tested or who are in quarantine because they have tested positive for the virus. So action needed to be taken, and it was unanimously decided in the last couple of hours that all matches would be suspended until the 4th of April. And that's not just in the Premier League, that's also the leagues below as well. But if I can tell you that the Arsenal manager, Mikel Arteta, is one of the people who has tested positive for coronavirus, and that just shows you how far-reaching this is, that it's gone to the very top, if you will. Also, one of the Chelsea players, Callum Hudson-Odoi, tested positive, and he actually posted on social media talking about how he had tested positive, but that he was feeling okay now. So, as you can see, many of the players are affected, and really, it didn't seem to be many other options for the professional leagues other than to postpone the matches because, as you can imagine, players meeting each other, fans coming as well to the grounds, it just didn't make sense. And in the last hour, the Premier League have released a statement saying that they have unanimously decided to suspend the Premier League with the intention of returning on the 4th of April. They say that that's subject to medical advice and conditions, and they continue to say, despite the challenges, it is the aim to reschedule the displaced fixtures when it is safe to do so. So unprecedented times in England.
These clubs and the players known right around the world, they've got millions of fans globally, haven't they? I mean, what is this all going to mean, for example, for Liverpool?
Yes, Liverpool currently 25 points ahead of their nearest rivals, Manchester City. They just looked set to clinch the Premier League title, didn't they? In the next couple of weeks, actually, it looked like their title rivals wouldn't have been able to catch them. However, because of the suspension of the matches, well, we know now that at least the league is going to be elongated, and there is a possibility of it not finishing at all at the moment. Now, if it is elongated, well, that can cause quite a few problems for many of the players because the Euros are scheduled to take place starting in June, with the players going off to play for their respective countries. So that would mean that perhaps those fixtures in the Premier League don't actually get fulfilled. Of course, there is also the issue that perhaps the Euros may not be able to take place. The Euros is set to happen over 12 countries in Europe. You can imagine the logistics and the problems that will arise because most of those countries will have cases of coronavirus. Why would they want more teams coming to them and clubs and supporters with them too? So there is a possibility that if the Euros are suspended until later on, then maybe the Premier League fixtures will be able to take place in June. So at the moment, it's all up in the air. That is as far as we know, but we do know that the Premier League fixtures have been suspended until at least the 4th of April.
All right, Jane, thank you very much indeed. Well, not just European football that is affected, European travel as well. All those countries, 26 countries inside the Schengen Agreement, have been prevented from getting into travelling to the United States by midnight EST time on Friday. Let's just go to the Commission. Ursula von der Leyen, Commission President, speaking now. Let's just listen in. I'm not sure if she's speaking in French or in English. Let's just hear.
We are ready to do more. We will do all that is necessary in order to support Europeans and the European economy.
Die heutigen Maßnahmen sind zugeschnitten auf die aktuelle Situation.
Today's measures are tailored to the current situation. This is an important package for us and for the European economy. But depending on how the situation evolves, we are ready, we're prepared to do everything required. We will do everything possible to ensure that Europeans and European economy are supported. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The outbreak of the COVID-19, as you just heard our President say, it affects every one of us. So our goal together is to work together to bring all of Europe's...
Let's pull away from Brussels, though. We just caught at the end of Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commission President, speaking there. But the thrust of what she was saying is the travel ban, which has been imposed by Donald Trump on the Schengen countries in Europe. Travel bans do not work. Europe taken very much by surprise, completely unaware that travel ban had been imposed on them unilaterally by the states, and a great deal of anger behind the scenes about that as well. Now, European stock markets have rebounded slightly in contrast to those in Asia, which suffered sharp falls over fears about the virus. On Thursday, markets in the US and Europe suffered some of the biggest falls in more than 3 decades since the great stock market crash of 1987. Here's Karishma Vaswani in our Singapore business hub with a wrap of the markets in Asia.
Asian markets have been volatile this entire week, and Friday's session was no different. Markets fell dramatically at their open, with places like Japan, India, Thailand, some of the worst hit. And some of these markets even saw trading in their shares halted when they fell by 10%. But then they swung back, erasing some of those losses. And I think what that tells you is that while investors are nervous about the economic impact that the virus might have, they're also being very practical, and they're looking for good buying opportunities when they can find them. Still, many investors simply don't believe the ammunition that central banks and governments have to shore up confidence in their countries will be enough to protect them from the economic fallout of the virus. What they are seeing is cases spreading around the world and travel bans coming into effect. That means fewer flights and fewer tourists and less money, frankly, spent at the shops. And that's what's dragging down forecasts for growth rates and why you're seeing so many investors so